regional office in Cairo. Briefly, IWMI is a research for development organization headquartered in Sri Lanka, Colombo. We do research for development, and we work with all water value chain stakeholders. This event is part of a project, a big project. We call it initiative, CGR initiative. By the way, IWMI is one of the CGR family, CGR centers. And today's activity is part of this initiative. I will give the floor to my colleague in a while to take us through this project, this initiative. Today we will be talking about reuse within the nexus in the region, in the MENA region. Probably we will zoom on two countries, Lebanon and Egypt. This is coming from our believing as IWMI and CGR group that reuse can play a big role in sustainability, also addressing vulnerability in the region by increasing productivity, by creating value, and also protecting ecosystems. And also, this is coming from our believing that the Nexus is a good platform, good tool to achieve sustainable development in the region. Let me share and introduce our speakers for today. We invited stars for you today. So let me start by Muhandis Engineer Khaldoun, the Secretary General of Aqua. We have also with us Mr. Maroon Musalem from ESFD, and he is former director of the water establishment of the South in Lebanon. In Beqa in Lebanon. They are our two keynote speakers for today. We've got also Mr. Jacob Woslender. He is the Netherlands envoy for the MENA region, based in Jordan. We've got Mr. Ziad Khayat. He is the Economic Affairs Officer at UNESCOA. My colleague, Dr. Maha Zuabi, regional researcher at IWMI, MENA office, specialized on agriculture, water solutions. And then Dr. Ahmed Nasrallah is the country director of WorldFish. WorldFish, by the way, is one of the CGR centers participating in this initiative, this project. I will go a little bit out of this script, and I will give 1 minute to my colleague, Dr. Maha Zuabi, in her quality of co-lead of this project, of this initiative, to take us briefly about this project, to place the context, and then I will take the microphone afterward to start the session.
شكرا كثير. Good afternoon, everyone. Just like quickly to introduce the initiative that I'm currently co-leading. It's from fragility to resilience in Central Asia, West Asia, North Africa. It's a 3 years initiative funded by the CGR pool funding, one of the 32 recently initiatives that CGR initiated last year. So this initiative focusing on addressing most challenge in Siwana region, starting by addressing climate change, water scarcity, drought, the issue of the biodiversity, as well as farm level challenges when it comes to farmers. So we have 7 CGR centers contributing to this or implementing this initiative. IWMI, ICARDA, FPRI, WorldFish, ABC, and CEP. CEP, the Center of Potato, which is mostly focusing on Central Asia. So we are focusing on 5 countries: Morocco, Lebanon, Sudan, Egypt, and Uzbekistan. Under this initiative, there are 5 work packages considering the issue of policies, integration between and harmonization between policies, as well as biodiversity, climate change, innovation through the agriculture value chain. Particularly, this event is under work package 4, which is led by IWMI. which address the integration between water, energy, food, land systems. So this is in a brief. There is like, if you just search C1 from fragility to resilience, you can find more information about this initiative. Thank you, Dr. Youssef.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Maha, for this quick briefing. So I note some keywords in mainly in the work package 4, which is about addressing the limits of growth by using the framework of Nexus, food, land, water, and also ecosystems Nexus. And I think this will be definitely the same keyword that will be addressed by our two keynote speakers. So first we will hear Engineer Khaldoun for 5 minutes, and then Mr. Maroon afterwards. The floor is yours, Mohandes Khaldoun.
Thank you, Dr. Youssef, and I would like to thank you to invite me to this very important session, by the way, because, you know, we finished one stage of partnership, and it was very successful, hoping to go ahead to serve this area of the world. Now, when we talk about food, then we talk about water. And when we talk about water, we talk about scarcity water. Since the morning, we are hearing about the limitation of water for irrigation and food, especially in the session was organized for Iraq. Now, the solution, what is the solution actually? The solution is to go ahead with the reuse, using the effluent treated wastewater. But when we talk about using the effluent treated wastewater, then we have to talk of a high quality treated wastewater to go, might be to the unrestricted irrigation. This leads us also to go to implement all the safety plans that should be adopted to ensure that the water, this treated wastewater, is fit for the different type of uses. And we talk about a sanitation safety plan, then we talk about tackling the effluent water from the toilet, till it comes to the table, T to T. This means it has to pass through many control issues. Controlling the water comes to the collection system, controlling the industry and its effluent to the collection system, then a very proper treatment by a qualified staff and accredited facilities. We do accredit the wastewater treatment plant in Aqua. At the end, then you have the effluent of good standards, then you talk about the other risks. Risk to the environment, risk to the soil, risk to the human who is using, farmers. At the end, the impact on the environment and the quality of the product, that's food. This is what we call, it's a cycle. By that, then we can approve that there is really nexus between the water, regardless it is fresh or very high quality treated wastewater. Now, I think the future, I have different idea about what we need from resources. Yes, we need desalination, but we have the best example that who work for many years about that. Do people in Arab region are able to pay $2 or $1.5 for the desalinated wastewater? I think it is not easy. Do we can stop irrigating many hectares of 2 million, I think our colleague from Iraq was saying, for food? No. I think the future of the water is the treated wastewater. The good treated wastewater, because also it is renewable. It is renewable. I think by saying that, I deliver my job. Thank you.
Brilliant. شكرا كثير مهندس خلدون. Appreciate it. Probably I will reflect on your amazing ideas after the talk of our colleague, Mr. Maroon, please.
بدي أشكر الأكوا على رأسها المهندس خلدون، وبدي أشكر ال IWMI على دعوتهم لنا، وبشكر الحضور الكريم. البرزنتيشن بس بدي أشوف وين. باردون. خلص أوكي. بس اوكي هيدا بس لحتى اذا بدي بهيدي مش هيك بدي هي اوكي تمام. بدي بلش اول شيء بالويست ووتر تريتمنت بلانت اللي هن بلبنان. في تيبل في الاكزيستنج البروبوزد والاندر كونستراكشن. بتشوفوا الجراوند توتال قد تبعهم. هودي حاله انا بدي اجرب ب5 دقائق احكي بسرعه، بس هودي التيبل بيختصر الويست ووتر تريتمنت بلانت، دوميستيك ويست ووتر تريتمنت بلانت بلبنان. هلا كمان الويست ووتر انا بدي احكي سبيشالي عن البقاع. الويست ووتر تريتمنت بلانت بالبقاع هني هودي المحطات، في منهم موجودين انما ما بيشتغلوا مع الاسف. منهم اهم محطه اللي هي لبعلبك اعاد واقفه 12,000 متر مكعب بالنهار بتكرر. حبيت اقول كمان انه هون بالبقاع تقريبا عم نكرر دوميستيك ويست ووتر بحدود 30,000 متر مكعب بالنهار، علما انه نحن عندنا بحدود 120,000 متر مكعب. بدكم تقولوا وين عم يروحوا؟ عم يروحوا بالانهر، تحديدا بالليطاني ريفر، وعم يلوثوا كل شيء. هيدا واقع المحطات بالويست ووتر تريتمنت بالليطاني ريفر بيزن. ليطاني ريفر بيزن جزء منه بالبقاع، الجزء الأكبر جزء منه بجنوب لبنان. هيدي البقاع اللي هي بتمثل 42% من مساحة لبنان، يعني مساحة البقاع 4442 كيلومتر. هون الينابيع 42 نبع، عندنا مي تقريبا 186,000 متر مكعب بالنهار. بالبقاع الميجر اسبكت اوف تشالنج عندنا اثنين، هني اول شيء عندنا ناتشورال تشالنج وعندنا الانثروبوجينيك تشالنج. هلا كمان عندنا مشكله بالداتا. في عندنا 4 ملوثات رئيسيه بالبقاع: الميونيسيبال ويست ووتر، الاندستريال ويست ووتر، الاجريكلتشر اكتيفيتيز، والسوليد ويست. حسب الاريجيشن ماستر بلان اللي انعمل للبقاع، مش لكل البقاع، من طريق الشام وباتجاه النورس، يعني باتجاه بعلبك الهرمل. عندنا هيدي هي الارقام، ما بدي فوت فيها، بس بدي اقول انه في بالووتر بالانس نحن عندنا جاب تقريبا بحدود 396 مليون متر مكعب بالسنه. شو الحل؟ الحل انه او تريدد، يعني نعمل الريوز تريدد، نعمل تريدد سيوج افلوينت، رين ووتر هارفستنج، او نعمل الاريجيشن افشنسي، او التشينجينج كروبينج باترن. حسب الاستراتيجية الوطنية للمياه NWSS بال2010 كانوا حكوا عن الريوز، قالوا بده يخففوا الريوز حسب الاستراتيجية الوطنية بلبنان، بده يخفف من 0 بال2010 تصير 20% بال2015 و50% بال2020. وحكين انه باستراتيجية بده يصير في 150 مليون متر مكعب يستعملوا للإريجيشن، هودي يعني من المياه المعالجة، و100 مليون متر مكعب للأكويفير ريشارج. مع الأسف ولا شيء من هودي تحقق، بس في عندنا محطة وحدة مبدئيا، وهلا في محطة تاني بطور الواحد. أول محطة هي اللي اشتغلت بس لسنة، هي بأبلح عملت الريوز لمدة سنة، ووقفت بسبب انعمل السيستم يعني، وكل شيء كان بدعم من الاتحاد الأوروبي، وانعمل irrigation بوند ليجمعوا الافلوينت اللي بيطلع من أبلح ويست ووتر تريتمنت بلانت. هالإيريجيشن بوند كانت مسيق بجورها منزل لإحدى الأشخاص، تشكى على البلدية، والبلدية هي عم تشغلها، هيدي مش المؤسسة ميه البقاع، تشكى على البلدية ووقف الريوز، بس المحطة بعدها ماشي. هلا من أهم العوائق الرئيسية اللي هي للريوز تبع الويست ووتر بدي اختصرها. اول شيء بتنفيذ الويست ووتر تريتمنت بلانت كمشاريع، يعني بالبقاع في جزء كبير بعد ما تنفذ، وحتى بكل لبنان بعد ما تنفذ. كمان مع الاسف ما في ستاندر ناشونال ستاندر للريوز. هلا الليبنور عم يشتغل على هذا الموضوع، الليبنور اللي هي المؤسسه الوطنيه للمقاييس. كمان المؤسسات المياه والدولة ما عندها الستاف الكافي وما عندها القدرة المالية تقدر تشتغل على المحطات، وعندنا كمان لاك اوف نيد انفراستراكشر لحتى ننقل هالووتر هيدي المكررة ووتر تريتد من البلانت للأمكنة اللي بدنا نروي فيها. باختصار الفاو عملوا جايد لاينز شو اسمه للويست ووتر، وللسلاج كمان يعملوا جايد لاين لهم، انما مع الاسف كمان ما مشوا يعني كستاندر. بس في ستاندر واحد عملوه الليبنور بالنسبه للسلاج ريوز، انما الويست ووتر ريوز بعد ما في شيء عم يشتغلوا على الموضوع. تاني شيء الووتر كود، يعني كمان عندنا مشكلة كتير كبيرة. الووتر كود اللي طلع سنة 2020 رقمه 192 لاحظ الريوز، إنما ما فيش ابليكيشن ديكريز لهالموضوع هذا. هلا الاي دبليو ام اي اشتغلوا بهذا الموضوع، عملوا عبر مشروع بووتر مينا بروجكت، عملوا ناشونال بيز لاين اسسمنت مشان الريوز، وهذا المشروع كان بالتنسيق مع ليبنور، بلجنه مع ليبنور. هذا والسي دي ار اشتغلوا على السلادج كمان ريوز. هذا اللي بدي احكي. أبلح ما بدي فوت بالتفاصيل شو يعني هون بريف ديسكريبشن عنا، هذا تركته اللي بيحب يطلع ياخذ البرزنتيشن يشوف شو وضعها لمحطة أبلح. أبلح بتكرر 2000 متر مكعب سكندري تريجلينج فلتر. هذا هون مشروح كل شيء وكيف. هلا هيدي الإيريجيشن البوند هيدي اللي هلا واقفه، هي بجوار المحطه بأبلح، وهيدي هي محطه أبلح اللي اشتغلوا يعني. وهيدي محطه بالفعل من المحطات اللي عم تشغل مزبوط. هيدي اللي عملوها اليو اس اي اي دي بنوها، والسي دي ام سميث هن درسوها وعم تشغلها البلديه. هذا السولار سيستم نحن عملناه كاي اس اف دي بتمويل من الاتحاد الاوروبي بالمشروع اللي انا عم بشتغل فيه. عملوا لهم هلا السولار بلانت بعد ما خلص، بعد ما سلمناهم اياه. هذا بقلب المحطه. هذا اللي عم اقول عنه. وفي شيء بدي اشير له هون، انه الليطاني ريفر هون part of Zabeka area is an optimal nexus of water, agriculture and energy. هذا منذ تأسيسه الليطاني سنة 1954. هذا النكسوس اللي نحن بنحكي فيه من 10 سنين أو 15 سنة، الووتر انرجي اند فود، هذا كان بالخمسينات، بأوائل الخمسينات انعمل بمشروع الليطاني على أيام إبراهيم عبد العال وجميل، ويعني هول العمالقة بالحقيقة. هلا في مشروع ريوز هلا عم ينعمل، وهذا الشيء كتير مهم. عم يعملوه اليو ان هابيتات، عم يدرسوه وبدهم ينفذوه. هو ريوز لزحلي ويست ووتر تريتمنت بلانت funded by adaptation fund. زحلي ويست ووتر تريتمنت بلانت هي تيرشري تريتمنت، بتكرر 37 ألف متر مكعب بالنهار. هي جديدة عملوها الإيطاليان كوبيريشن وعم تشتغل مزبوط، وهي باستلام مؤسس مياه البقاع، إنما بتمويل من الإيطاليان كوبيريشن، كان بوقت من الأوقات من الورد بانك. هون كمان عم أقول إنه الليبنور عملوا أبروفد لستاندر هيدا السلادج، وفي هلأ مشروع ثالث هيدا كتير كمان بدنا نشير له، هو ريوز كمان من محطة زحلي اوف سكندري تيرشري اوف اند تيرشري تريتد ويست ووتر فور كورن اند بوتاتو irrigation بالبقاع من زحلي ويست ووتر تريتمنت بلانت فيا ووتر شيبمنت باي ماجو، مؤسسة ماجو ات ذا ايوبي. الايوبي يعني الجامعة الامريكية في لبنان هي اللي عم ترعى هذا الموضوع، فاندد باي بريما. وعم بكبوا التريدت ويست ووتر تبعوا الزحلي، عم ياخدوه على منطقه اسمها حوش سنايد تابعه للجامعه الامريكيه، عم يزرعوا هونيك مثل ما قلنا البطاطا والكورن، وعم يعملوا اختبارات على الموضوع. هذا بالنسبه للريوز اللي انا عندي اياهم باختصار. اوكي، ايه ميرسي لكم. اذا في شيء اسئله انا جاهز.
شكرا كثير أستاذ مارون. Thank you very much. So, I think personally I took note of 3 or 4 keywords here mentioned by our esteemed keynote speakers. Water scarcity is reality. All countries of the MENA region have a sustainable development agenda, and reuse can play a big role. So reuse is key here. And probably I will say a few words about the project that have been mentioned by our keynote speakers, which is Rewater MENA project that was led by IWMI, International Water Management Institute, and funded by the Swedish International Development Agency, implemented in the MENA region, but we focused on 3 countries, Egypt, Jordan, and Lebanon. And we worked with a lot of partners, FAO, ICARDA, Arab Water Council, SIDARE in Egypt, Aqua in Jordan, RSS in Jordan as well, and also Ministry of Water and Energy and LARI in Lebanon. We came up with similar recommendations as well and observations. We believe that the potential in the region is more than 22 billion cubic meter of municipal water that can be reused. Unfortunately, 40% as average is just discharged in nature, and we've seen the example of Litani, which come with environmental consequences. I took note also of the gap between planning, project planning and implementation, including reuse projects, the need for standards, norms to accelerate and to enable the environment for the reuse. And also the need for integration between water reuse and food and also energy. We've seen some successful stories in Litani, but I'm sure that our experts will definitely cover this aspect. So yeah, for me, these are the challenges that we probably will cover through the interventions of our experts. The first colleague to speak is Mr. Khayat from UNESCO, and he will take us through the reuse in the MENA with focus on the opportunities for reuse in this framework. Please.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. So I'll briefly just walk through the MENA region, wastewater use in the Arab region in that sense. So I just wanted to start with this one, comparing the safely treated wastewater to the total renewable water resources. So this is stressing again the point Dr. Yusuf said, that the resource, the potential strategic resource of treated wastewater, when you're comparing it to the available water, natural water, total renewable water resources. For example, in the Gulf, that source is more than the available total water resources. If you even look at the internal renewable water resources, if you remove the factor of the shared water resources, the available treated wastewater is a huge amount. It's a huge value when you're comparing it to an available water resource in the region. So again, this is a water, so why is that important? This is a water scarce region. 19 out of the 22 countries in the Arab region are water scarce countries. If we look at the agriculture sector, it's the biggest user by far. It reaches up to 80% in many of the countries. A region that's being affected highly by climate change. So there's going to be more variability, more stress on these water resources. On the other hand, you have a treated, stable wastewater resource that you're having there. And you have an issue with the agriculture sector that's been stressed more and more in the recent years. With the war in Ukraine, we've seen the stress on the agriculture, on the food security in the region. With the COVID, we've seen that again. So there's a big potential opportunity for the use of that treated wastewater, for that nexus between the water and agriculture to really achieve that value that we're seeing. I won't go into through this. Unfortunately, when we were looking at the SDG 6.3.1, they're not monitoring the reuse. They're saying that the wastewater is treated, where back Aqua in 2012, at the MDG Plus stage initiative between Aqua and ASQA under the League of Arab States and the Arab and Sea Water Council, we actually covered where that reuse is going. And two main outcomes out of that MDG Plus initiative that was done is that a large quantity of the treated wastewater is being directly discharged without any use to the water courses. So we're having that wastewater collected, treated, in some places tertiary treatment. Some places it's even drinking water quality, and we're just discharging it in water courses. On the extreme other opposite, farmers are going and using untreated wastewater unofficially. So you have these two extremes where we're investing energy, resources, treating but not using it, and on the other hand, farmers are going and using untreated wastewater in their, for their uses. So what are some of the challenges that we've seen in the region, and this has been, unfortunately, hasn't changed for a big while. There's insufficient investment in the face of this changing regional context. With the increasing scarcity, with climate change, not enough investment is coming to the wastewater and to the importance of that wastewater. And if you look at the ODA that's coming, only 4% is coming to water supply and sanitation, and much less is coming to wastewater and reuse. There's a problem with the cost recovery. So if you treat that wastewater, how will you recover that cost from water utilities? Okay, is there a viability for treatment and for that? There's, in many places, limited institutional capacity and coordination between the different sectors on the use. There isn't enough policy frameworks. They remain undeveloped in many parts on the quality and the use of that. There are displaced populations, like example in Jordan, in Lebanon, where you have these crises and you have an increase in population, and you need to serve these populations and collect that wastewater and reuse it. And then also there's also an additional challenge when you include industrial effluents and all of the pollutants with that. Now, what are some of the responses that are needed? Again, institutional and policy frameworks, as IWMI project is an important part that's helping to put regulations and the ways of using, and as Dr. Khaldoun said, on the safety, water safety plans that you need to take that. There's more need for investment planning and balancing budgets for investment in this water reuse, in collecting the fees, and in making these projects viable. Engaging the private sector and putting in place the enabling environment where you have the private sector to come in and engage in these wastewater treatment plants. There's a need to improving connectivity to wastewater networks for reuse in many places that's still not at the level where it needs to be. In some places, we need decentralized wastewater management and not thinking of these big projects that are hard to finance, and that leads to the ecosystem management. And then also looking at wastewater treatment from a nexus perspective, looking at the energy, looking at the food, and how that is a bridging, the treated wastewater is a bridge between these three, where are many wastewater treatment plants generate biogases that can be used for their energy. As Samra treatment plant here in Jordan is an excellent example of that. So this is some of the examples, like for example, in Egypt, there's been large investment in huge wastewater treatment plants. This is Bahr al-Bakkar, which is one of the largest of its kind worldwide and produces a capacity of 5.6 million cubic meters of treated wastewater that's being used to cultivate reclaimed lands. On the other extreme, you have these decentralized nature-based solutions for wastewater treatment in places like in Lebanon, where energy is an issue, and we can benefit from these. Also, there's been a lot of efforts at the regional, I'll just mention them quickly, under the auspices of the League of Arab States and the Arab Ministerial Water Council, and the AOAD, the Arab Organization for Agricultural Development, and the Joint Water and Agriculture Ministerial Council, which is being supported by FAO and ESCWA, and that's also leading coordination on the agriculture and water. And one of the resolutions in the last meeting that happened also look again at encouraging wastewater treatment, but also to look at the sludge treatment that's associated with that and the potential for reuse from that. So I'll stop there briefly. I went over my 5 minutes, so I'm sorry. And thank you again for the invite.
Shukran. Thank you, Ustad Ziad. Thank you very much. Thank you for reiterating the potential behind reuse in the region, and also for highlighting the uneven situation in terms of standards of reuse in the region. We've got countries with very advanced reuse status and others where they are not really. And also for highlighting again this the double roles of reuse as part of the problem, since some growers, for example, are using the untreated water, we call it indirect use, and also as being a part of the solution to address water scarcity. You also mentioned some responses that I'm sure that we will discuss them in the Q&A session. I will not take further time. I will invite my colleague, Dr. Ahmed from WorldFish, to take us to another dimension, which is the food component within the nexus using the reuse.
شكرا دكتور يوسف، شكرا لإيمي وللتنظيم الرائع. هتكلم مع حضراتكم على البينيفيت مالتيبل ووتر يوز على الفارم ليفل. زملاتي اتكلموا على الناشونال ليفل، لكن هنا هتكلم شويه على الفارم ليفل وازاي farmers adopted المالتيبل ووتر يوز. drop of water means life for in our region, even to Egypt. However, Egypt has the river Nile, but 95% of Egypt is away from the Nile, desert area. So water is scarce for many farmers in Egypt, and this is quite important for us. The driver for focusing on multiple water use is by 2050, population will exceed 9 billion. In the same time, by 2050, most of Africa will be drought. So we need to produce more food with less water available by 2050. So this is a challenge we need to address. Integrated agriculture, aquaculture, or multiple water use of water offering several advantages in farm level. It's enabling efficient water use of water, means generating more money from every unit of water, increase income to the farmers, afford animal protein, produce animal protein in area away of animal protein production, like to produce fish in desert. So people in desert having access to fish is not easy. Also, this protects the environment as using ground water coming from fish farm to irrigate crop that improves soil characteristics, and at the same time waste in fish farming used as input to agriculture. And finally, it is a resilient food system as we can produce several food products in area. It's well established in general aquaculture. There is waste generated by fish farming, which is source of methane and gas emissions. So if we use this waste in the crop, this will means better utilization of nitrogen and phosphorus generated by fish farming for crop. And this saves fertilizer. This diagram showing multiple use of water. So there is farmers here, by the way. Farmers or the private sector are the one who developed this system and make some more renovation over years because they believed or they saw the economic benefit of multiple use of water. So, for instance, water could be used once to produce fish and then goes to crop. Also, it could be used to produce two types of fish. For instance, tilapia first, then go to catfish, and then water goes after catfish to irrigate crops. Water will be rich with ammonia and phosphorus. In the same time, the water goes to crop, could goes for forage crops. الفورage crops دي بتستخدم في الانيمال بروتين. الانيمال بروتين الويست بتاعت الانيمال بروتين بتستخدم للفيرتلايز ذا لاند وفي نفس الوقت بتستخدم لانتاج الميثان. So السيستم بيكون almost zero waste with proper integration. In Egypt, people are using this in hundreds of farms in the country, in desert area, and there is some cases in delta land. We have done some research. It could save up to 50% of fertilizer requirement per crop. So this helps to reduce fertilizers, which have environmental benefit. At the same time, integrating solar system with this also contribute to environmental friendly, and farmers are able to produce fish in remote area. Small-scale farmer who benefit from land distribution in west of Minya. Those farmers everyone have 5 acres. One of the farmers tested the system. Following year, all the farmers around adopted this technology because they saw the use of water from his ponds better for the crop. So they were borrowing water or taking water from his pool to irrigate crop, and they find the saving fertilizer. So the system adapted itself, and actually it's adopted in several scales. Could start with small scales up to larger scale. With the larger scale could be multiple or recycling water several times inside the fish farm before going to irrigate a crop. In 2011 with Dutch, we have done a study and we find the use of water coming from fish ponds to irrigate crop in several fish farms. This case study, we calculate fertilization generated out of this. So this has a positive or proved fertilizer generation by the integration, which contributes to reduce fertilizers. By the way, some of the farmers who adopt organic system using this approach, and those farmers are exporting to Europe using this approach. Also, indoor integrated system could be adopted, like aquaponic and hydroponics. So this is another example which could be in small scale or backyard one. But still some research needed to standardize the system and make sure that there is no waste generated. Technology is required, as some people have experience with fish farming, others have experience with crop, but rarely we find people have experience with both. And to balance the nutrient dynamic from feed to fish to water to fertilizers. So this knowledge which is we working with now under SWANA project. With this, thanks for your listening.
Shukran. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Ahmed, for sharing this example of, I would call it small-scale nexus, where water and food are in very good integration, and also energy can be integrated. And also for showcasing Egypt's expertise in this regard that can be upscaled in other countries. I also I would like to express my astonishment regarding the job creation opportunities behind this framework, and we all know how important this aspect in the region and in the development agenda of our countries. Thank you very much. And since we were speaking about food, and also it was also mentioned by our keynote speakers, the need of standards, norms, to be sure that we are producing food, fruit, vegetables in a safe way is very important. Very important for all stakeholders, for government decision makers, and also for customers. So to be sure that we are delivering safe food irrigated by treated wastewater, we need norms and we need ground evidence. And this will be the core message or core part of the presentation of my colleague, Dr. Maha. Please.
Assalamu alaikum. Thank you so much for Aqua and all partners. Thanks for audience for keeping you late. So yeah, my presentation will be talking about as well part of some outcomes from the Rewater MENA projects that been implemented in, particularly I'm focusing on Lebanon. Thanks for my colleagues who prepared these slides. Actually, unfortunately, none of them were able to be here to present, so I'm presenting our colleagues' work. So maybe the title, just to focus, we are talking about reuse, so we need to look as well about the how to enable upscaling reuse in agriculture. Through the research, development, innovations in MENA. To talk about food and Lebanon, in Lebanon, the food chain remains exposed to contaminants due to widespread pollution of soil and water sources. Irrigation with polluted is a common practice that remains uncontrolled and increased risk to human health. So the development of a long-term policy for monitoring and managing water quality leading to its conservation and sustainable use is critical. Plus, the creation of irrigation water quality standards, or more broadly, water use criteria that enhance health protection and food safety at reasonable prices is important. Reuse been largely promoted in the MENA region, and and some other countries as well as an adaptation measure to respond to the water scarcity. But to be able to move to that step, we need empirical evidences. So just quickly, in the water use background in Lebanon started like in 2011, and some colleague mentioned that FAO already prepared guidelines, but it's never been adopted officially by the government. And still vegetable eaten raw cannot be grown by treated wastewater. However, there are some uncontrolled illegal practices. In 2017, there were like limited studies in Lebanon on the agriculture use of treated wastewater. In 2019, when the ReWater supported by SIDA started, Lebanon at that time, they were working to develop these standards. With the support from ReWater MENA, this trial was conducted in collaboration with LARI, the Lebanese Agriculture Research Institution, to do the following: to assess the productivity, the quality, and agronomic, environmental, and health risk of use of different wastewater or treated wastewater qualities to irrigate various crops under different farm irrigation practices. So this is the map of the Ablah, which was mentioned by my colleague Moron. And down the stream, there is the green, I want to say circle, square, where is the LARI plot. So the trial used 3 different water quality: groundwater pumped from LARI station, treated water from the plant, and the other source, it was a river from the Litani. 4 type of crops were tested or planted there: parsley, lettuce, radish, and spring onion. And 3 type of irrigation system were installed as well, which is drip irrigation, sprinkler, and service irrigation. So based, in total, there was like 108 plots for this experiment. Methodology, data was collected, water sampling, soil sampling, do analysis of water, yield quality, quantitative parameters, yield qualitative as well, microbial contamination, and metal contamination. Some water quality analysis, yield and nutritional, as well, bioaccumulation, estimated daily intake, so on and so forth. So we can definitely make these slides available for whomever interested to read more on technicalities. Some empirical evidences published last year out of this research under the project, and there are like a couple of as well empirical evidences will be soon published. These are more examples as well. Key results and conclusion, that being just the outcome of the ReWater MENA project last year. So 3, let's say, category of water quality can be used. All vegetables eaten raw allowed under drip irrigation, according to the specification here. Another criteria, vegetable eaten raw allowed under drip irrigation except those grown underground. And the other criteria, which is vegetables eaten raw, are not allowed. So our research has shown that the adoption of drip irrigation with water of less than 3 log E. coli per 100 millimeter is safe, even for vegetables consumed raw, except for root crops such as onions or radish that should be irrigated with water having more than 2 log of E. coli per 100 ml. So here is more linkages with investment when we are talking about drip irrigation for such practice. So there is a need to start thinking of investment and support farmers for adopting such irrigation system. The other result as well, treated water does not harm vegetable quality compared to vegetables irrigated with other water sources. Third, these results deserve to be considered in the formulation of the first Lebanese standards for water use, aiming to protect environmental health while making more productive and efficient use of water sources. So the empirical evidences generated by the ReWater, MENA, together with abundant evidences generated in other countries, will be taken forward again by IWMI under the From Fragility to Resilience Siwana initiative. And we will be working together with Ministry of Energy and Water in Lebanon, LEBNOR, and all the stakeholders to have the formal water reuse standards for Lebanon. And this work just started last month. Some recommendations out of this trials and the whole ReWater MENA project, particularly for Lebanon. We still need future research, evidences, innovation if we are moving with treated wastewater for food. Science, policy, society dialogue is really needed because these three pillars can't be treated separately. So in Lebanon, there is still a need to establish a field monitoring laboratory, develop guidelines for water reuse in agriculture, conduct research trials on reused water in agriculture, monitor irrigation, water sources, and effluent quality, modeling studies on the impact of irrigating with reused water at different scales, crop, farm, sub-basin, and larger basin, gain wider social acceptance, the dissemination of knowledge when we are talking about guidelines, and the promotion of science, policy, society dialogue, develop bankable water reuse models. This is very essential and needed. Assess health risk in informal, indirect water reuse. Incentivize the adoption of on-farm practices for safe water use. And here, when we are talking about, for example, drip irrigation, and further incorporate gender transformative approaches still needed. So by this, more information available on the ReWater MENA website. As well, just last October, a source book was as well developed, which is water use in the Middle East and North Africa, where a huge expert from the MENA contributed to this, reflecting examples from the whole MENA region. Thank you so much, and sorry if I took much time.
Thank you, Dr. Maha, for the presentation. Just one more information that I need to share is my colleague, and for the sake of time, she covered just one small part of the work that has been done in Lebanon within this project, ReWater MENA project. She covered the part where the irrigation mode within the reuse as a factor to understand the dynamics of contamination in the crop and in the fruit and vegetables. There have been other experiments, like, for example, the pre-harvest time, in which we need to stop irrigation, for example, as well as the distance between drippers and the trees, while always using the treated wastewater to irrigate crops. I'm sure that we will probably have time to cover these details as well. And now the last presentation will be about very, very important aspect, which is investments. So we will hear and learn about Netherlands' vision regarding investments in this sector from Jacob, the envoy of Netherlands in the MENA region.
Good afternoon. Pleasure to be here, and thank you for staying that late in the afternoon to listen also to what I have to say on investments. I'm Jacob Waslander. I'm the Netherlands envoy to the Middle East and North Africa for water, energy, and food. My offices are here in Amman. And what I'm going to talk about are 4 things. Let me see, how can I move this forward? No idea. Can you tell me? How do I shift to the next slide? Like this. All right, okay. All right. So I have 4 main topics, which I hope to cover in 5 minutes. First, adaptation finance, so climate adaptation. That's essential in the MENA region, and you'll see in a moment why. Second point is that if you really want to make a big shift, private sector financiers are essential for increased impact. I'll also give some best practices and examples, and I'll finalize with main messages. Let me first start with saying that we as the Netherlands will later this month host with Tajikistan the Global Water Conference in New York City. It's the first, I believe, in 50 years, which will take place, and we are really delighted to be in the lead of that conference. We know of more than 600 side events which will happen during those days. 6,000 non-state registrations have been received. In addition, we will have all the UN member states joining. So it will be an important element for pushing the SDG 6 agenda. And it's necessary because we're terribly behind schedule. It's really difficult to achieve the goals we have set for 2030. And in MENA, that's not really very different. Here you see, and this is from the Chatham House report on cascading climate risks, a graph which shows all the countries in the MENA region. And you'll see that all the countries are grouped based on the level of fragility. So whether you're very fragile or quite stable. It's also grouped, and that's along the x-axis, the water quantity per capita which is available. And the size of each bullet shows the available income per capita of each country. So it also indicates the relative wealth of each nation. But all those nations, what they have in common, whether they are fragile or not fragile, whether they have quite some relatively water available or not, they are far below the stress level of water availability. Water scarcity is the big issue which drives, whether you're rich or poor in the MENA region, drives your development. So something has to happen to make sure that all the nations here in this region can prosper and can progress. So important investments, important changes are essential. And that's why you need finance. And finance, it's not just about government budgets or for the poorer countries, ODA, development assistance. You need to crowd in the private sector financiers. So you need to make sure that either, whether it's venture funds or private banks or insurances or pension funds, you need to make sure that they can find ways of engaging in your activities. And for mitigation projects, renewable energy and so on, that's quite simple these days. There are business cases to be made. And that's where the private sector financiers are indeed present. But for adaptation, including water management, it's a challenge. But we have to find ways to do this if you really want to scale up quicker, faster, as you need, as I just showed. And that it is possible, that is what I wanted to demonstrate here. With 3 practices. First, the Good Transition Plan. It's an initiative by several banks, major banks, together with some research institutions. where they show that for banks to flourish, they must not only look at the rate of return of their investment, so the financial part, but it's essential also to look at sustainability, to look at environmental, social, and governance impacts. Because if you really want your portfolio not to become under risk as a bank, as a major bank, you must make sure that you invest in the right things. Otherwise, you will risk a virtual spiral downwards. You will invest heavier risks if you do not look at ESG aspects. So there is this transition plan, which is now also subject of central banks in Europe, in the US, the UK, and also Canada and Australia, to see whether besides financial risks, also look at sustainability risks, so that you really push banks also in the direction of, for example, adaptation finance. Second example is on the Dutch Fund for Climate and Development. It's mixing public money, government money, grant money, together with private money. It is a fund where specific risks, the higher end risks, are being covered by what we call in the financial world cheap money. It's grant money. So that if such a risk materializes, it is covered, and that gives also an assurance to others who are investing more from a commercial perspective, so who need their funding back, to also engage in those type of funds. And so this Dutch Fund for Climate and Development initially engaged in, for example, more renewable energy activities, but now also has a specific water management fund, which they hope to close at 1.1 billion, and where the Dutch government, for example, has put in grant money to cover the high risk end. And another example where I think also room can be found to find income streams is, for example, launching carbon credit certification schemes, making sure that through your activities you sequestrate emissions so that you can get certified, which certificates can be sold on international markets to create extra revenue streams to cover also the higher risk ends of your activities. Because in the end, what you need to tap into is, I think, the wider financial flows, which are channeled through more the private side. And that brings me to my final slide, the main messages. So be aware that in the MENA region, globally, there is really SDG 6, which is in big jeopardy. But in MENA, it's even worse. Really, it's urgent to seek opportunities to really change the course of action in all countries in the region. Secondly, look at possibilities to apply innovative structures like public-private partnerships. And I think they can be a key tool. I recently visited here in Jordan the Samra water treatment plant, which is an example of a public-private partnership, where I think big parts of risks have been covered through grants of a major donor, and that has helped to make this wastewater treatment plant functional as a public-private partnership. And that should be repeated, I think. Third element is look for other revenue streams to cover your high-end risks. And that is, for example, a carbon credit certification schedule. But there are other options as well. But this is something which was approved in Glasgow at the 26th COP meeting. And so this is now an option which we should really move forward on. And the fourth one is be innovative, combine different approaches of technical assistance and financial assistance to make sure that specific risks which are happening can be addressed by getting extra technical support, which should be underpinned by grant money, and then in addition get financial support to make those investments a reality. And in that way, you can, I think, make this shift which is so urgently needed. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Jacob, for this very interesting presentation and very interesting insights. I took notes of the different good practices that you mentioned, the DFCD, Good Transition Plan, and also the carbon credit certification that is rising up and picking up worldwide. Probably we don't have really some big examples in the region. We need champions in this regard in the region, in the MENA region, but yes, it is very promising solution. And also the PPP as formats and solution for cooperation and financing, and we do have in this solution, we do have good examples in the region, Jordan, in the Gulf, GCC, Egypt, Morocco. So thank you very much. You probably noticed that all these colleagues took very short time to talk about a lot of things, and I really appreciate and thank you all. Why? For two reasons: to keep as much as time for discussion, but also because we know that you are all tired. So yeah, I open the floor for questions. I suggest to collect the questions by groups, depending on how many questions we will got. Do we have any questions, remarks, suggestions, recommendations for Lebanon and also Egypt in regard to nexus, reuse, and sustainable development? So please. Why? Yeah, please. We have a question here.
Thank you very much, and I would like to take the opportunity to thank our distinguished speakers for the amazing presentations and information. I don't have a question, I have a recommendation or a comment on wastewater reuse in general. Being in the sector, at least for the last 30 years. In our part of the world, wastewater reuse is a very important element of our integrated water resources management approach. And this particular element will not be a real substitute for freshwater resources, which is an issue in our region, allocation and reallocation. Unless we treat this resource to its maximum level of treatment to be a crystal water. Once we reach this level of treatment, the wastewater reuse can be a real substitute for fresh water. Of course, this is associated with financial burden. You need really financing and cost to do crystal water out of treated wastewater. Although we have good examples now in the region, and not recent. I remember Salaybiyah in Kuwait, done 20 years ago with tertiary plus RO, crystal water. Unfortunately, is not the reuse is not being reused up until now in the way we would like to see it. Until we reach this level or we have the financial resources, wastewater reuse in countries like Jordan, Lebanon, Egypt, Tunisia, we can rely on two approaches. The first approach is to blend the secondary or tertiary treated wastewater with the freshwater resources. And here we have to construct water harvesting schemes. And this is maybe applicable to Jordan and Egypt and Tunisia, maybe not in all areas of Egypt. So this is the first approach which we use. The second approach, which is very important from environmental, social, and psychological point of view in using the treated wastewater, is to have a separate conveyance, separate land, and separate cropping pattern. So everybody in the country knows that this product is coming out of treated wastewater. So those are the recommendations that I would strongly recommend to our colleagues from Egypt and Lebanon and any similar country. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Nasser. Yeah, very, very insightful ideas and recommendations. If it doesn't matter, probably one more thing that I can add, and regarding the separate infrastructure, traceability as well, is something that definitely will unlock the potential. And in this project that we keep mentioning, which is Rewater MENA, we've seen that traceability and also involving other players of the food value chain in these reuse projects can help as well, because they will be giving feedback, and also they are the ones who are in some situation imposing norms and standards regarding food safety, etc. So very, very important information. Thank you very much. Do we have any more questions? Yes, please.
It's not a question. I think just trying to convey an experience that we have in the GCC, where this thing now becoming, a major, maybe the only source that we can fulfill our water demands. There are certain things that that can make wastewater become major part of our water supply portfolio. It's you can't just work on the farmer. You have to work on a full system. Number one is that you really have to make sure that treated wastewater, is part of your integrated water resources management plan as a strategy. It's not an ad hoc issue. It has to be continuously taken into account in that. Number two, I think the governance issue is very important. If you are treating, if you are not transparent in the results and everything, and if the operator himself or itself is the service is the controller of the quality, and so there is no third party to come and tell that this is bad, or good, so to instill the confidence in the user. That's also another constraint that we are having. If the farmer doesn't know anything about wastewater, you have to go and convince him, or you have to give some knowledge to that farmer. What are the things? Again, safety planning. If you don't have a sanitation safety plan attested and published, to just instill the confidence of the user that there is some control on the risk, I mean, it's not going to work. So all these things has to be done in a at the same time, in an integrated way. And at the end, there is always a risk. I mean, you can't tell me that this water doesn't have a risk. But what is the risk that you can tolerate as a society? In the United States, when they say we will be reusing wastewater, we are okay. They say we are ready to have a risk of 1 to 100,000, case. And there are methodologies to really tell the risk. I mean, there's always a risk that nobody can tell me that this is safe and so on. So my job is to mitigate the risk as much as I can. For instance, I did not like the Lebanese study that say, okay, all vegetables, okay. I mean, I can say that if I have really a good control in the place, but I would say don't use it for the vegetable and to be eaten, raw, or use it only for trees and so on and so on. So our job to be safe is to go really and minimize that risk as much as we can. But to go so bluntly, and boldly and saying, let's use it for any type of vegetables, I think that's, again, scary. There are issues. There is psychological repugnancy. It will remain. If you go to the market and they tell you this is from treated wastewater, although maybe the treated wastewater is a quaternary treated, like in Kuwait, still they will not go to it and they will go to the other, right? Because there is some psychological issue. There is also, an infrastructure issue. Our problems that we are producing the wastewater in urban areas, while the agricultural areas on the other side. So this is also another. So the best thing to do is to have peri-urban agricultural systems around. So there is a lot of planning that need to be done, and I think it should not be taken only from one perspective. It has to be looked at from all sides. Thank you. And I have only one issue. There is always a call for PPP. Why don't we establish companies with stocks by the population? They buying stocks and they became the owner of that company and they start, financing themselves. This is just a question maybe for Jacob. I have seen this happening in Germany. I have seen it in many European countries. They don't, when they say PPP, they don't mean we are having another company coming from outside with the government. They say, no, let's put the stocks of the company in the, in the market and let's buy it. So that's just some comments. Thanks, Yusuf.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Walid, for this interesting reflection and probably some interrogations in there. I will give the floor first to Jacob to reflect on the question about contribution, and then to Muhandis Khaldoon, Engineer Khaldoon afterward.
Yes, thank you. I hope it works. Yeah, you hear me? Yeah. Right. Well, thank you, Walid, for this very interesting presentation. As also thank you to you, Dr. Hassan, for your very interesting perspective. What cooperatives are companies owned by population.
Sorry, Jacob, can you get closer a little bit to the microphone, please?
Right.
Thank you.
I think cooperatives are companies owned by the people themselves. That's a good solution in the sense that we in the Netherlands have had those cooperatives as well for many years, and they worked well. I think most of them have now gradually disappeared, being submerged by major companies, but they've played a big role. And I think that could happen in this region as well. So there's nothing against that. My thinking is, how can you tap into extra financial sources so that you, on top of your government budget, or budget from your community, can crowd in additional money to scale up your investments. That is my overall thinking, and that's where I think in the end you need to work on getting private companies on board. It doesn't mean that you necessarily need to structure this in a kind of new company structure where the government has X amount of shares and private shareholders have another percentage of shares. It could be like with Asamra, that the entity is owned by the Jordanian government, but that the management is outsourced to a private company, and that you have specific agreements on the price, on keeping the assets in excellent shape, on what type of wastewater quality you will release from the plant. And for that service, you as government pay this company, and it's verified every period of time to make sure that each party continues to deliver the services agreed. I think it works well there. If you see the Zarqa River now and the stories I heard from the past, it's impressive, the change which has been materialized. And if these type of things could happen more, that would be great. And that's not only for wastewater treatment plants, but also for other water management activities, whether it is now the Aqaba Amman conveyor belt and desalination plant, which we're all working on, where the Jordanian government needs support from abroad. If you can crowd in other financial sources, I think as long as you can manage your risks, that may be a good option, because it can make sure that your fiscal deficit as government doesn't become too big and really difficult to bear by the taxpayers. So that's a bit what I'm looking for. But cooperatives, can be a very interesting step forward. We use them in Germany and the Netherlands, everywhere, with very good experiences. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Jacob. Engineer Khaldun, please.
بداية موضوع الريسك موجود في كل شيء. بقول موضوع الريسك موجود في كل البروسيس تبعت المياه، حتى الووتر الريسك عالي. لذلك WHO سوت الووتر سيفتي بلان. بداية عملت الووتر سيفتي بلان وأطلعت وطورتها مرة ثانية، بعدين حكت عن السانيتيشن سيفتي بلان. الآن صار يقولوا integrated water and sanitation safety plan. This is the new approach. هلا لما نحكي عن السانيتيشن سيفتي بلان، يعني هي عملية يعني طويلة ومعقدة، ومع كل ما مسار يمشي الافلوينت ووتر له تشيك بوينتس وله معايير وله اشتراطات وله كمان تحقيق النوعية. يعني احنا حكينا الاندستريال بدك انت ربط اي اندستري على الصرف الصحي، هذا له معايير، واحنا بالاردن حطيناها قبل ما يصير عندنا ديمقراطية، يعني إعادة للديمقراطية. كان في أمر دفاع بالإغلاق لأي واحد بنزل. هلا الهازارد ماتيريالز بالمواصفات الأردنية معروفة، في 7 ممنوعات، في كذا، زائد الرقابة على الصناعات موجودة. if you eliminate this. وبالمناسبة في عهد الدكتور حازم كلف الجمعية بأن نسوي انفنتوري للاندستريال، سوينا انفنتوري، حطيناه على GIS، اطلعنا الكميات، حطينا الهازارد ماتيريالز وهاو تو كنترول، لا، وطورنا بايلو يساعد اي موظف بالقانون يفوت ويسوي انسبكشن، وافترضنا نقاط. يعني هذا الاهم شيء الاندستريال. هلا لما نيجي على الكوليكشن سيستم، عفوا بدي امشي شوي طويل. كوليكشن سيستم كمان عندنا ممنوعات، ممنوع انك تكب كمخه، مناشير، حجر، الى اخره. هلا بنيجي على التريتمنت which is the most important. التريتمنت بدايه you have to certify the operators. لازم اللي عندك تحط ستاندردز تشغيليه وتحط certified operators، وهذا احنا عملناه من خلال 5 برامج تدريبيه عاليه المستوى، تبدا من الاوبريتور الصغير للمدير العام للمحطه. علاوه على ذلك سوينا شيء اسمه TSM Total Safety Management. بتفوت بتدقق على المحطه، بتحط الهازارد ماتيريالز، تتاكد السلامه الفنيه، تتاكد السلامه المهنيه، السلامه الشخصيه، وبالتالي اذا هاي المحطه مش موجوده they have to. بعدين كل سنه في لها اعاده فحص وتجديد. 3 لما تطلع هون القصه، لما تطلع المياه مكلوره هون بصير إشي دور الرقابي الآخر، الغذاء والدواء في الأردن، غذاء، البيئة لفحص التربة، الصحة للسلامة. فهاي مجموعات خلينا أسميها رقابية مهمة في عملية استخدام السانيتيشن سيفتي بلان. في صار بحث صغير بالأردن وعملته الدكتورة ما حلال شي مرة، أول مرة بصير عندنا، اللي هي كانت من الناس اللي نفذوا معنا مشروع الريوز. أخذت قطعة مي، قطعة أرض، مية واحدة بتريتد وست ووتر، طلعت النتائج بالتريتد أفضل. ليش؟ لأنه المزارع اللي بسقي بالمية العادية ما عنده اشتراطات، يعني عفوا بجوز بول هو، عفوا يعني بدنا نحكي. فبالتالي النتائج كانت لما كنت تضبط كل المعايير كانت أفضل من مرات تستخدم مية ملوثة. هذا البحث موجود وببلش. خلاصته وصلنا لمرحلة نفرض إنه في ريسك، وزي ما تفضل الدكتور حازم وحضرة حبيبي الدكتور وليد، مش شرط تأخذها للخضرة، في عندك إشي اسمه reallocation of resources بتوديها. يعني في تل أبيب إحنا شفنا بضخ المي بالمحطة، أنا شفتها بضخوها بالأرض التريتد وبطلعوها من غاد للزراعة. هلا بصير لها فلتر. في قضايا الآن حديثة إذا بدك توصلها توصل للمستوى تقدر تزرع. بالمناسبة أنا زرت بأمريكا محطات كل المي بيطلعها الذرة اللي بتجينا منها، الذرة المعلبة منها. ما بدك بتسويها ريوز، بتسويها artificial recharge، بتوديها للبالم تريز، النخيل، الأشجار. لكن هذا كله بيقول إنه هي المصدر المعتمد اللي لازم يكون قدر الإمكان ولا على مستوى. موضوع اللي تفضل فيه معالي الدكتور اللي هو البلندنج، يس، بس الآن إحنا بنسوي بلندنج بالجوردن فالي، بس إحنا اليرموك يعني ما عادش في مي. وبالمستقبل هل أنا عندي مي أخلط ولا عندي مي أنقل لعمان أشرب؟ فلذلك لابد من إنه نحط انفستمنت أكثر to upgrade our treatment plants. وأي مشروع جديد بدنا نسوي بالمنطقة العربية ننظر لأعلى مستوى التنقية وإضافة عليه مشروع ريوز. للأسف هلا بسووا أبجريدز في اليرموك لفوعرة اللي احنا بنعرفها إربد المركزية، ولوادي العرب اللي هي دوقرة، وللشلالة لا يوجد مشروع ريوز معها. وشكرا.
شكرا مهندس خلدون. Thank you very much for these clarifications.
الإخوان في حياة عمان يعني
شكرا دكتور. بالنسبة لحياة ووتر وفي سلطنة عمان، نحن عندنا تجربة يعني جديرة بالذكر. يعني عندنا مشروع السلطان الراحل سلطان قابوس الله يرحمه، كان واحد من المبادرات مع مشروع المليون نخلة. مشروع المليون نخلة طبعا موجود في مناطق لا يوجد فيها خلينا نقول مياه جوفية مستمرة، واعتمدوا على يعني كانت الحكومة أنشأت شركة خلينا نقول لمشروع المليون نخلة، واعتمدوا اعتماد كبير على المياه المعالجة. طبعا في خلط لأن الكميات المياه المعالجة في هذه المناطق غير كافية، ولكن الاعتماد على المياه المعالجة كان أساسي لإقامة هذه المشاريع. مثل ما ذكروا الإخوان كلها هي المستقبل، المياه المعالجة هي المستقبل. بس أنا أريد في نقطة يمكن من خلال الخبرة في القطاع، إذا المياه الجوفية مجانا عمر المزارع ما بيفكر يروح لنقطة ثانية. فنحن نتكلم على مياه مجانية، هو عنده بير بيسحب المياه مباشرة أو عن طريق إذا كان في عنده قناة. إذا المياه هذه مجانية غير مسعرة عمره لن يذهب إلى المياه المعالجة. النقطة الثانية، عندنا أمثلة كثيرة في المناطق في المحافظات، مجرد المزارع ما ينتفي معاه المصدر المياه الجوفية هو يسعى ويجتهد ويقاتل حتى يحصل على المياه المعالجة هي ككمية. فإذا التشريعات لازم تأخذ في الاعتبار مسألة الكلفة بالنسبة للمياه الجوفية، لأنها ثروة ممكن في المستقبل ما نحصلها في الأجيال. شكرا.
هلا عفوا، الآبار عندنا بعرفش العمق المي، كلفة استخراج المي. هلا إذا ما في تعرفة، وعندنا بالأردن في ليميتيشن مسموح بس لحد معين بالاستخراج، وحتى كانت 100,000 نزلناها ل60. وطبعا يعني بس بقول شو بينه وبين حازم الناصر خلدون أيام ما كان هو الوزير. تتذكر عدلنا نظام عدة مرات، وصرنا حتى البير وبنتهي بطلنا نعطيه بير. بس في كلفة إنتاج، وهالأيام كلفة الإنتاج الكهرباء عالية على المواطن. إن المزارع الأردني كهرباء بطل في مدعوم كهرباء، حتى المية الشرب اللي بتصلحها اليوتيليتيز رفعوا عليها الكهرباء، وحققت خسائر لمؤسساتنا. ما دام في كلفة عالية وبامب سيضطر إلى الذهاب إلى بعدين الحكومة، أنا برأيي هذا إذا بدها تبيع حتى المي المعالجة إشي رمزي، زي ما بنسوي بالرمثة وزي ما بنسوي بالمفرق. بالرمثة أهالي الرمثة زرعوا المواد العلفية، صدقا غنيوا ومقابل 6 فلس كنا نبيعها للمتر المكعب. طبعا التشريعات ضرورية جدا. وبعدين يعني انت هاي مي بدل مي، هاي مي بدل مي. هسا شرطه انه تعطيه مي ما تضر زراعته، وهذا احنا لازم نضمنه. شكرا سيدي.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you. Thank you very much for the example from Sultana and the reflection, Engineer Khaldoun, definitely. And we all agree that the solution needs to be context specific. There is no magical solution for all situations. And since we are a little bit focusing today on Lebanon, so definitely there are costs for pumping. So it's not very easy, very straightforward to pump from a cost perspective. I think if we don't have further questions, recommendations, suggestions, I will probably give all speakers half minutes to reflect on what has been said. And the questions will be different. So let me start by my colleague, Dr. Ahmed. By focusing on Lebanon, and we all know the expertise of Egypt in terms of integrated agriculture and aquaculture in general, fish farming, what would be your, let's say, golden recommendation to upscale this experience, for example, in Lebanon by taking into consideration the context there?
Okay, my recommendation is for Lebanon is treated water could be used for fish farming after making sure quality standard, and then this water could be used for tree farming. So this is a recommendation based on the discussion we have now.
Brilliant, brilliant. Thank you very much. Thank you. And here we will be definitely seeing or experiencing the reuse and also the integration with food. Probably energy can be integrated. And we all know some experience that can be easily be doable in Lebanon with very simple resources. Thank you very much. My question to Dr. Maha. I know, we all know that at the From Fragility to Siwana initiative, we are striving to increase the resilience of communities and also systems, water, land, food systems, to climate change and other shocks. Based on this discussion and also your experience, how do you see the reuse within the Nexus framework in Lebanon, by a little bit focusing on the reuse in agriculture, obviously?
شكرا كثير على السؤال. وبصراحة كنت بدي يعني أعقب على الكلمة اللي حكاها الدكتور وليد. الجفرنس كثير مهم. لما بدي أحكي أنا على ريوز كثير مهم، لأنه إذا بدي أخذ الفاليو تشين، في عندي different organization starting من السبلاير، إذا بحكي على المي، لليوزر، للكونسيومر. ففي عندي whole value chain that should be work together. Particularly إذا بدي بس to focus على السبلاير واليوزر، إذا بدي أحكي على المزود للمي إذا بدي أحكي على اليوزر اللي هو الفارمر، في عندنا إحنا ستيل بعض خلينا نحكي ما في انتجريشن كتير لما بنحكي على البوليسيز that is related لهذا التوبيك بلس الكوردينيشن between اللاين ministries. فرضا إحنا عندنا بالأردن وزارة المي مسؤولة تزويد المي لباب الفارم، جوا الفارم البراكتس هي بتيجي مسؤولية الاكستنشن سيرفيسز وزارة الزراعة حتى توجه المزارع كيف يستخدم. ففي عندنا إشكالية بهذا الجفرنس، وهذا applicable for other countries كمان بالمينا ريجن. على موضوع substitution كمان، إذا بحكي substitution فهون بده coordination بين السكترز على مستوى البلاننج، على مستوى التشريعي، وعلى مستوى التنفيذي. فالجفرنس is a very crucial if we are heading for upscaling reuse in the MENA region. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And this was also highlighted by the institutional and regulatory components of Rewater MENA project. Probably we focus on Egypt, but a lot of outcomes can be used for other countries. Thank you very much. Mr. Ziad, as UN agency and also as Lebanese expert, what would be for you let's say, the actionable, pragmatic, and doable action to enable the environment for more nexus cases, as we know that there are some good examples, but what can be done in your perspective to enable the environment for nexus and obviously using the reuse in Lebanon?
I think in terms of reuse and focusing on that, it's the valuing, putting the valuing chain of all of these. I'm not just talking about the economic value, but also looking at the social value and looking at the environmental value of this treated wastewater resource. Economic in terms of pricing, I think many has talked about pricing the wastewater and pricing the water, putting a value with the social acceptance and the social value of this water that's seen, that is also important for it, and also the, if you want, the lost opportunity or the cost of not treating this as an environmental value also, that would very much enable an access that would see these values and the interchange and the chain between the different types of water and how the community accepts that in terms of the social point.
Thank you very much. Indeed, capturing all values of the reuse is definitely something very interesting. And at IWMI, we also think that it is very important. By the way, we just finished a series of workshops and consultation meetings about cost-benefit analysis approaches that are context-specific to capture all these values. Thank you very much. My next question is to Jacob. We enjoyed your talk about the different good practices that can be used in the MENA region. My question is, according to your experience, what's the gap, what is the lacking capability that we need to build in the MENA region to be more successful in capturing these opportunities?
Well, I think you have a lot of good things which, if you blend them together well, you can make big strides forward. So I think the urgency is there, but there are also a lot of elements which, if they are correctly linked, could really push the agenda. What I think is terribly important is getting your data together, analyze them, design scenarios which you discuss with your stakeholders to make clear what are the options, what is the avenue to take. So think through how to do it, get people committed, and then push things forward. I think that is really crucial, both for governmental policies as well as for crowding in the private sector, understanding what is the situation, where do I see opportunities, how can I create a business case?
Brilliant. Thank you very much. Thank you. My question to Mr. Maroon is about, we learned about some good examples, some successful examples in Lebanon despite this situation. And as experts and also former director, we all know that in this kind of circumstances. We need champions. We need people who drive, who lead, who make change to make this happen in the ground. According to you, and let's go to capacity building now, what are the qualifications for our leaders that is lacking in the region to be acquired by the leaders in the region to be able to drive and to lead these kind of initiatives? I mean, the successful stories of Nexus using the reuse.
يعني شو بفهم منها.
Again, sorry, we'll make it more simple. As director and also experts, our leaders need to be more, let's say, involved. And yes, what would be your recommendation on this?
أنا بقترح معلي بدي بالعربي. الريكومنديشن أنا صح كنت بمؤسسة مياه البقاع وحكيت عن البقاع بالنسبة للريوز وعن لبنان ككل. اقتراحي مثل ما هلا انعمل بأبلح الاكسبيرينس عن الريوز ومثل ما هلا عم ينعمل بمحطة زحلي بزحلي ويست ووتر تريتمنت بلانت عم ينعمل هذا الريوز مع اليو ان هابيتات. كمان بقترح ينعمل بايلوت بروجكت بمنطقة تانية مثلا لجيب جنين ويست ووتر تريتمنت بلانت يتعمم يعني ينعمل بايلوت بروجكت ويتعمم على بقية المحطات بس يكون مشروع متكامل مش مشروع يعني مش بس انه لانه مثل ما حكيت انه في اليوهان هابيتات وفي مؤسسة تانية قلت عم تاخد بتجي بالصهاريج بتاخد شو اسمه التريتد ووتر الويست ووتر التريتد ووتر عم تاخده على حوش سناد يعني على محلات بعيدة بينما أنا بقترح إنه محل ما في ويست ووتر تريتمنت بلانت وخاصة نحن عندنا بالبقاع في مناطق زراعية حواليها يعملوا كمان النتورك الكونكشن للمزارعين لحتى دغري يعني من هلا هيدي من ضمن هي وحده من اقتراحات كثيره استكمال كمان المحطات الصرف الصحي بكل لبنان لانه حسب انا التيبل اللي عرضته انه في كثير من المحطات نحن عم نكرر يعني تقريبا بالبقاع هلا استاذ خليل هون هو مسؤول كمان عن بمؤسسه مياه البقاع نحن مش عم نكرر تقريبا 20% من الصرف الصحي بالبقاع ونفس الشيء بلبنان ما بنتجاوز ال 25% يعني في بيقولوا انه تقريبا 28% من المياه الصرف الصحي تعالج بلبنان والباقي غير يعالج هيدي مهمه كثير لنقدر نمشي بالريوز بعدين استكمال الستاندر تبع الويست ووتر ريوز لانه مبلشي فيهم الليبنار اللي هي المؤسسه الوطنيه اللبنانيه اللي بتعمل هالستاندر هيدي كمان هيدي مفترض تستكمل هيدي بده ضغط على الحكومه لحتى هلا عملوا السلاج ريوز بس باقي الويست ووتر ريوز.
ثانك يو.
هودي ابرز الاشياء يعني واكيد دعم المؤسسات لانه كمان في نقطه كثير مهمه هيدي بدي اشير لها بلبنان انه حسب الاورجانيجرام الحالي ما بيلحظ الاورجانيجرام الحالي القانون 221 بيلحظ انه يكون في يونت للإريجيشن ويونت للويست ووتر مع الاسف الاورجانيجرام الحالي الموجود بس بيلحظ للبوتابل ووتر فالمطلوب كمان تعديل هال يعني الانظمه لحتى يصيروا يلحظوا هلا لوقتها فينا اذا لانه هي بدها مجلس وزراء انا برايي يندعم لا يندعم في يونت يعني مثلا في يونت هلا بمؤسسه مياه البقاع مؤقته وبعتقد بقيه المؤسسات عندها اياها يونت انشأوها سموها ويست ووتر تريتمنت يونت هيدي بدها دعم من المؤسسات المانحه بالتدريب وبكل شيء يعني وحتى بالاوبريشن اند مينتنس.
Clear.
هيدي
Clear. Thank you very much. In one word, please, Mr. Maroon, what skills is needed for our leaders to drive reuse based nexus? In one word, what skills? In our leaders, what's the skill that is needed, that need to be empowered, enhanced in our leaders, in our decision makers? Is it planning, governance?
اكيد انه وانا اعطيت مثل ليطاني، يعني اعطيت مثل انا المصلحه الوطنيه للنهر الليطاني، قلت انه هيني مطبقين النكسوس اللي هو الووتر فود اند انرجي، يعني فود يعني عندهم هني هيدرو باور بلانت وعندهم مياه الليطاني وبيهتموا بالإريجيشن، يعني هذا النكسوس موجود عندهم بالليطاني من سنة 1954 منذ إنشاء المؤسسة.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay. Yes, yes, please. In one word, yeah, please.
Hello, good afternoon for everybody, presenters, lecturers, and moderator.
Can you introduce yourself, please?
I'm Engineer Gabi Nasser. I'm the Technical and Investment Director in North Lebanon Water Establishment. I just want to wrap up some extra things that I have, in addition to what I have heard from our colleagues in the panel. In Lebanon, there is, in reality, till now, there is no final decision about the wastewater sector. Neither the collection, nor the transmission, or the treatment, and of course, unfortunately, the reuse. So we have to legislate. If we don't do the legislations correctly, we are just circling around the bush, and we will not reach any decision that is clear for the individuals or the government or the end users. Unfortunately, there are now maybe 10 to 12 wastewater treatment plants that are executed mainly on the seashore and partly within the interior of the country. On the seashore, all these wastewater treatment plants are discharging to the sea. They are in places where there is no agricultural zone near them, so if you want to redesign the discharge, maybe it will take more money and more time. For the internal wastewater treatment plants, of course, something can be done, and water reuse will be efficient. However, we are missing two important things in Lebanon. First, the norms. What are the norms that have to be used or that have to be adopted to use for the water to be safe for reuse? We are working on that, but till now there is no final decision, there is no law. The second thing is to finalize what shall be done with the wastewater sector. Who is going to administrate this sector? Because there is plenty of things that have to be changed administrative-wise and manpower-wise. You need so many people to upgrade and to train in order for the wastewater sector to be ready. The other thing is the strategy, the national water strategy for the wastewater sector. It should be all revised, because in the current water strategy, we can see that there are parts of the treatment plants. We tried to convince the government to use part of the treatment plants as wetlands, especially in places where the land is available, because the cost of treating biologically the wastewater is very high, and you know the crisis that our country is passing through. So in conclusion, I hope that that you can consider to push with all our partners that are working with the water sector, whoever they are, to push the government of Lebanon to enhance and speed up with the legislations possible, do the revisions that are possible before we speak about the treatment, the trainings or the investments or any other things. Else, we will be back to the point zero when the European Bank EIB has put so many money in Lebanon, invested so many amounts of money to build up these water treatment plants, and that till now, most of them are still out of
Clear.
use. Thank
Clear.
you very much.
Thank you very much for this interesting notes. You covered a lot of things, honestly. I thank you for that, and this will be helping me to wrap up. I will try to wrap up and will give the final word later on to my colleague and my friend. Later on, I will let you a chance to conclude. But first, let me reflect on 2 or 3 things. I've got good news. It was already announced by my colleague, Dr. Maha, that IWMI is launching a work on the norm. So we are trying to contribute from our side as knowledge generation organization to help in developing norms. And the experimentations that were presented by my colleague, and here I will reflect on your smart remark, Dr. Walid. As I said, for the sake of time, she presented the work on leafy and vegetables, because in the norms we need to cover all kinds of crops. I mean, leafy with high risk, and then no contact crops, and then forage, etc., etc. So we presented today just one group, but there are obviously tree crops and forage related experiments, and we will keep doing that. We will work again with the Libnor, Lari, and other stakeholders in Lebanon. And this is an invitation to all organizations or research development organizations in the region to join us in this work that is done under the From Fragility to Resilience Siwana initiative. Roles, responsibilities of institutions, regulatory aspects, it is definitely bottleneck in many countries, not only in Lebanon. The good news here again is we, as IWMI, along our partners, we've done work in this regard, and other organizations are doing really great job in this regard by defining roles, gaps between organizations to enable the environment toward this industry, treated wastewater and reuse. And definitely it was mentioned a lot today, treated wastewater is only a part of the solution that need to be presence in the integrated water resources management. I thank you, and I will give the honor to my friend Mohandes Khaldoun to close.
My last word, if there's no implementation of sanitation safety plan, then we are kidding talking about reuse. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I need to mention something, that all these ideas will be captured in a public document, like a policy brief, and it will be public to all of you and all who are interested. Thank you very much.